Nearly a year after its introduction, the Liberal government's controversial gun control bill has passed in the House of Commons. Bill C-21 will now head to the Senate. The legislation will put restrictions on handguns, increase penalties for firearm trafficking, and try to curb homemade ghost guns. It also includes a ban on assault-style firearms that would apply once the bill comes into force. The government bill passed 207 to 113 with the support of the Liberal, NDP, Bloc Québécois and Green members of Parliament. The Conservatives, however, opposed the legislation, saying it penalizes law-abiding gun owners instead of targeting criminals. So for more on all of this, we are joined by Wendy Souquier, the co-founder of Coalition for Gun Control. Wendy, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning here. What's your reaction to hearing about this new legislation?
It's groundbreaking. We've been working on this for over 30 years, and most Canadians for 30 years have wanted to see a ban on semi-automatic military-style firearms. Most Canadians want to see restrictions on handguns and better screening. So it really is a game changer and puts Canada in line with most industrialized countries. We had started to lag behind with the loopholes that were introduced to our legislation over the last few years. So this is great.
Okay, now you say most Canadians are on board with this, but of course, as I mentioned just before coming to you, the Conservative Party has been opposing this new legislation, saying it penalizes law-abiding gun owners instead of criminals. So what do you have to say about that?
Where do criminals get their guns and who are criminals? If you look at the mass shootings in Canada, if you look at most of the murders of police officers, if you look at most of the murders of women by their intimate partners, those are typically legal guns and often legal gun owners. The Danforth shooting was a gun that had been stolen from a legal gun owner. So there's no question smuggled guns are part of the problem, and there are measures in place to improve the controls over the borders. But we have to get serious about controlling access to firearms. And remember, handguns and military-style assault weapons are not used by hunters or farmers. They're used by target shooters and gun collectors, and most Canadians support us in saying the risks of those firearms outweigh the utility. So there's nothing in this legislation that affects law-abiding hunters. There's nothing in this legislation that affects the hunting rights of Indigenous peoples, but it will do a lot for public safety.
I mean, we've seen such divide in the U.S. just south of us, but why do you think here in Canada this is starting to become such a partisan issue?
It's always been a partisan issue. So since Brian Mulroney, the Conservatives have opposed virtually every effort to introduce stronger gun control. And in fact, when they were in power, they took us back 30 years, eliminating provisions that had been in place since 1977. It's taken several years to get those measures back. We'll never get back the registration of rifles and shotguns. They not only got rid of that as a policy, but they destroyed the records of who owns 6 million firearms. It was just gratuitous. So this is not new with the Conservatives. But what is, I think, really reassuring is the other three parties have stood together to get this law passed. And now, fingers crossed, we hope it will get through the Senate.
And that is, of course, the next step. Okay, Wendy, I have to leave it there. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Wendy Souquier, co-founder of Coalition for Gun Control.